we'll talk about human respiratory system. Respiratory system is mainly consisting of two components, that is upper respiratory tract and lower respiratory tract. The respiratory system begins with the first part of the upper respiratory tract, that is nostril. Nostrils or the external nares are the opening of the nose which leads to a chamber known as nasal cavity or the nasal chamber. Nasal cavity leads to pharynx. Pharynx consisting of mainly three parts, that is nasopharynx, oropharynx and laryngopharynx. Nasopharynx is a part into which nasal cavity opens, oropharynx is a part into which oral cavity opens, and laryngopharynx is the inner part of the pharynx which opens into larynx. Larynx is a cartilaginous box-like structure which helps in the production of sound. That's why it is also called as a sound box. The upper prominent part of the larynx can be visible from the upper side of the neck or front side of the neck, and it is known as Adam's apple. The opening of the larynx is known as a glottis, which has a flap-like cartilaginous structure known as epiglottis, which play an important role during the swallowing. Because during swallowing, this epiglottis closes the glottis, thereby it prevents the entry of food into the trachea or the larynx part. This larynx leads to trachea, which is the first part of the lower respiratory tract. This trachea extends from the larynx up to mid-thoracic cavity, and at the level of fifth thoracic vertebrae, it divides into primary bronchi. So, the right primary bronchi enters the right part of the lung and left primary bronchus enters the left part of the lung. Inside the lung, this primary bronchus further divides into secondary bronchi. In the right lung, this right primary bronchus gives rise to three secondary bronchus, and in the left lung, this left primary bronchus gives rise to two secondary bronchus. Later, the secondary bronchus further divide to form a tertiary bronchus, and this tertiary bronchus further divides to form a bronchioles. The last part of the bronchiole is known as terminal bronchiole. This terminal bronchiole gives rise to many very thin, irregularly walled, highly vascularized bag-like structure known as alveoli. Each human lung have 300 millions of this alveoli, which is a structural and functional unit of the respiratory system. So, part from the external nostril up to the terminal bronchioles is known as conducting zone, which will conduct the air from the atmosphere into the alveoli part, during which it clears the air from the foreign particle, it humidifies the air, and it brings the air to the body temperature. But there is no exchange of gases takes place in the conducting zone, and the exchange of gas takes place only in the alveoli and its duct part. That's why it is known as respiratory part or respiratory zone or exchange part of the respiratory system, during which there is exchange of oxygen and the carbon dioxide between the atmosphere and the blood takes place. So that is how trachea divides into primary bronchi, secondary bronchi and tertiary bronchi and up to alveoli. That makes up the lung in the case of human. So that is all about the respiratory system of human.